Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. We're live at the Nutmeg Tavern.
Yes, we are.
I am John Townsend, your host. With me, special guest Michael Dragoo. You've probably seen him on cooking episodes, the occasional live stream, and Ben Franklin himself. No, not really. Let's see. There's where's Ryan? No, Ryan's not behind the bar. Who else? Who's behind the bar? Ivy is serving us behind the bar today.
Our barmaid.
So she's going to be bringing food out to us because Michael has prepared all this food. And let's see. Behind the scenes there, Aaron's on the console. He's making sure the stream is good.
It's going so good.
All the technical stuff is happening like it should, and you can hear us. And Kyle is in the question seat.
Hello.
Unfortunately, Ryan is not with us today, so it won't be as rude and clamorous as usual. So
His family is sick, and he's better where he is, not here.
He's taking care of his family.
Yep.
The barkeep this week will actually be someone respectable.
Yeah, we have someone respectable behind the bar.
Well,
so it won't be.
There's an hour. That may change. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kyle, do we have a question to open us up? What do you think?
We do have a question to open us up. Are there any stories of rich people that intensely helped the poor people? I assume that it wasn't a common thing to do because of social classes in the time period.
I wouldn't say that was necessarily true at all. Although I don't have any stories off the top of my head. Do you?
No, other than local governments would set up a prominent person, generally 2 per community, in an ordinary or a tavern or an inn, to head that up when it wasn't a woman.
Right.
They would set somebody up.
But there is a very certain quantity of charity that's happening and folks helping out people. So I don't think it was. I mean, they may not necessarily have gone out and worked in a soup kitchen, right? But they certainly would support the poor. So that's. I could undoubtedly find some examples of that. So after our first question, I want to do a couple quick things. We still have a couple of Nutmeg Tavern mugs available. Probably 3/4 of them are sold. So there's just a small quantity of these left. So if you're interested, there's the brown one with the cool green, and then there's the black one with the blue. These guys are available. Make sure to check out. There should be a link in the description section.
Link in description and in
the chat. Yep. So if you're interested in these, they are going. We just have a very few left. Also, quick, the Maggie Delaney Her Story DVD and music CD combo. Make sure to check that out. That's on the website too. Really excellent thing, and of course you can see the YouTube on that. Tell us a story about this episode.
Sure. Last time I was here a month ago, and normally I'm here a couple times a year, but somebody, Rebecca, wrote in, Michael Dragoo, it's been a while. And JS replied to that, I want to see him make Ben Franklin's favorite recipe and character, whatever that was. We closed with him flying a kite. Well, I'm not sure we'll be flying a kite. It depends on the weather.
We'll find out. Yeah.
We'll find out later. I did bring my lucky key just in case. So
with the lightning mark on it.
Yeah. So I couldn't find a favorite meal, and people refer to me as Ben Franklin because of my waddles and my glasses, my hyperextended tummy. So, but I was fascinated. I didn't know much about Ben Franklin, honestly, other than what I learned in the same history classes you guys generally did. And but I was able to find 7 or 8 of his very favorite foods. And so we're gonna throughout the hour we're gonna be presented with some of those. And discuss them, and then answer whatever questions you can. But I am not a Dr. Franklin authority.
Just Franklin studies.
No.
So Ben Franklin is a wonderful character to study because there is a lot written about him and a lot he wrote, letters and his autobiography. If you want a quick read, a fun read, you can find several different editions on Google Books or whatever of his autobiography. Great fun read. There's even some food references in that I might talk about later. Ben Franklin is great. So what do we got here?
We've got he loves pickles. I have some pickles. I have he loves corn. Instead of gnawing on a raw ear of corn, I made a Tavern biscuit, and I replaced the wheat, the flour with corn meal. So we've got those 2 things. He loves honey. We've got honey on it. barmaid, can you bring out the 2 mugs, please?
Uh-oh. There's mugs, because you
Yeah.
got to have something to drink.
Well, and he loves. Here we go.
Whoa, look at that.
We have a special mug that I made for the occasion. I can't remember the person's name. That
What was it?
sent in this art.
Let me load it up.
Zambia
Zambi
Arts.
Arts.
Zambi Arts. There we go.
So he is particularly fond of Newtown Pippins.
There we go. I'll lower it a little bit. Boy, that's clear looking. Mhm.
Yeah. And so we've got some hard cider made from Newtown Pippins.
Okay.
Newtown is was a town just west of Queens. It's a borough of Queens now. It's changed its name. Let me see here. Changed its name about the 1900. It's now called Elmhurst. But Newtown
Boring.
Pippin apples show up in the 1660s, and apples are not indigenous to North America, to any of the Americas. Crab apples are in our recipes. When we see something referred to as a common apple, that's a crab apple. But they don't have apples until the mid 1600s.
Sometimes just called crabs.
Just called crabs, yes. Something you'd normally stay away from. The Newtowns are still grown in certain areas of New York, of Virginia, and quite a few of them are grown in California for the cider industry. So here's to us,
Yeah.
the Nutmeg twins, and the Newtown apple starts. It's called a pippin, Newtown pippin. A pippin can mean many things. It's a seedling. It can be a tart apple. It can be just a young person. The Hobbit has Merryweather and Pippin as the younger hobbits, and that is more of a tart, smart-mouthed Hobbit, I think is why he's called Pippin. But the longer the Newtown apple is stored, the more sweet it becomes. So a month or 2 into storage, it is just a wonderful apple. Not a pretty apple. It's brownish and greenish and mottled. It's the type of thing you'd not want to choose, but it's just beautiful, I think, and it's one of the very oldest strains in North America. So I don't find that objectionable at all.
No,
it's very sweet.
It's very nice. Yep, a nice cider,
Yep,
cider is probably one of the most popular drinks in early America, especially for tavern drinks. You find that maybe even in some areas more popular than beer because it's so easily made.
Yep. They can't keep their apples as long as they can keep their cider. So.
Right. So I'm gonna have to try this pickle. I'm not a fan of pickles.
Well, no, pickles and the cider are probably not going to go well together. You frequently
Come
see.
on.
I'll
Just
leave
do
it.
it.
You
Yeah.
gotta try it.
Just do it.
Come on, Chad.
Come on.
Tell him to do it.
It's a pickle.
It's a pickle. That's a good pickle.
Interesting.
Very
Why-
interesting.
Tell me about the pickle thing.
He thinks it aids digestion.
I can
I
imagine.
found no reference. I'm not saying there isn't. I could find no reference on the pickling technique he might have preferred. So this is
a pickle.
these are just pickles out of a jar. Yes,
Oh, that's not true.
that's true.
Michael
And,
made these special.
He did. But it does. You find biscuits and pickles on board, on table, throughout a meal, over and over again. It's just something that would have been used to fill in or to refresh a palate.
Yeah.
They're just always there.
To
So
give you a break from these really sweet biscuits.
well, the biscuit is a Mary Randolph recipe. There's a pound of flour and a half pound of sugar. I replaced the wheat flour with the cornmeal,
And then added another cup of sugar. It's
perhaps
just right.
And there's honey on it and butter, so this thing is just waiting for a heart attack. Oh, good. They're
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, they're good. I can guarantee that.
Yep.
I was gonna say I've been refreshing my palate with about 4 or 5 of them back here. So
Yeah, we got the whole case.
Yeah. If you hear in the background, it's. So anyway, I was tickled to see this, and
Yeah.
somebody
They turned it
put
into-
forth some great effort. So I turned it with my friend Shutterfly. I turned it into a couple of mugs. So
There we go. How about a question or two to
Okay.
break this up?
how did they get rid of bronchitis in the 18th century?
Oh, how'd they get rid of bronchitis?
pickles and hard cider.
Yeah, that's...
Pickles and biscuits, right?
Well, I shouldn't have taken the mouthful of stuff before I wanted to answer
I
that.
wonder why you did that.
Yeah, we could probably pop open. I've got some cookbooks here. If I had time, which unfortunately we don't, I could pop open some and just start reading through it and finding it. All of these, not all of them. Many of the cookbooks have home remedies, simple remedies in the back. They wouldn't call it bronchitis. That's not a typical term that you find in the 18th century showing up in these cookbooks, but they will have different terms for these. Sometimes you got to look that one up. It's like, okay, what's an ague? What's a, they'll use terms like cancer, which they don't mean the same way we do. And I'm trying to think of the one that has to do with, lung problems, and I can't think of it right now. But you'd go digging through there, and they'd have some goofy recipe which might kill you, or it might make you feel better.
Yes, mercury is involved.
Yes.
Generally. And other things.
White lead and all
too
sorts
fierce
of,
to mention. That's right.
Yeah, some real interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my questions is, can you tell us something about medicine mercury?
Yeah, mercurials were. Will Kinton had a real had a real good piece on mercuries, and talking about how they work very rapidly. So if you want if you want to make someone throw up really quick, you could give them some different kinds of mercury. Of course, we know it's poison and it's bad for you, but in fact, almost all of our medicines today that we use, that our pharmacology that's out there, is a poison in some way or another. And we actually, there are two different kinds of ideas for medicine. There's sort of a food-based medicine. I will build people up. They're missing something. I'll give them more. And then there's the poison-based medicine, which is, they need this thing and it will, change them. So mercury is one of those things they used a lot in the 18th century. They would use it for venereals, but they also used it for other items too. So
The French pox.
yes, the French pox.
Can you tell us more about fat wax?
Oils, you take oils and suets and waxes, you mix those things up, and it's a wonderful protectant. You might use it for moccasins. You might use it to protect your knives, any metal gear that you don't want to get corroded, or it needs to be.
It's the colonial cosmoline.
Yeah, exactly.
It's used for many
so
things.
used for a lot of different things. Make sure to check out the episode that we do with Coal Cracker where we mix some of that. I think we used some, was it raccoon?
It was
Yeah.
raccoon fat, yeah.
Yeah, it was raccoon fat and wax, and great episode. And he was a wonderful, wonderful person to work with, and he brought some great episodes. So make sure to check out the fat wax episode.
What can you tell us about Alexander Selkirk's Crusoe-like adventure when he was stranded on an island? Did news of his time there reach the American colonies?
Undoubtedly. I don't know about exactly how that would be. I mean, those sorts of accounts are printed in Great Britain, and then they naturally come over to the United States. So the same way they would print cookbooks and bring them over to the United States, which not very many things were being printed in the United States about those standard things. We were really importing most of those printed things and stories. So whether it's a story about Indian captivity, or a story about someone who's lost at sea, like Selkirk was, there are those stories come over, generally printed in Great Britain and brought over. More and more of that printing is happening during the 18th century here in North America. But those kinds of stories would show up in. There was a great market for that sort of information.
I'm going to get some. Oh, was that it, John?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do donations real quick. Thanks everyone who has donated so far. Bobby Force 1, thank you. G Karjala, I believe. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
providing a wholesome, entertaining, informative channel sans politics.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Planet Express. Have you looked at early colonial South African cuisine, as I am from South Africa? And then 80s Totally Awesome. Thank you. Can you speak more on democracy versus representative republic? So the South African one.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very, very interesting topic, especially with the kind of colonization that's going on there. I mean, obviously the British were using the Cape, and other countries were using that at different times, or sort of owned it, I guess would be the way to say that. There in the 18th century, early 19th century, and I'm sure there's some very, very interesting adaptations to cuisine for that time period, especially with people moving in and out. So you've got people coming from Great Britain, stopping there, then going on to India and other parts of the world on that side in the Indian Ocean. So it would probably have some very, very interesting things going on with their cuisine.
Now, the Michael Twitty ones, what was the area that you guys were focusing on with that one? I can't remember exactly.
What part of Africa?
Probably West African coast. I'm not sure. Senegal, I think, is what he was talking about.
Gotcha. Okay. And then democracy versus representative. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody just said
them?
thank
We
you
just
for
said
not
thanks
having
for
the
not-
political thing.
Maybe we won't.
But I mean, it's part of the history, and there certainly is some question about what government should really be like. We had the experience of monarchies, and we were seeing what was going on. There was all this French thought and other, philosophy thinkers in that time period, and you can see all that being put into the folks who put together the United States, Jefferson, and so many of these other guys, looking at Locke and some of those other big thinkers. There was some thought about how we needed to have a mix of a system, not completely federal and not completely direct democracy. So it's interesting the compromise they come up with, but compromises are always a compromise.
Yeah.
So.
Do we want to move on to the next dish? It's been about 10
guess.
Oh, we certainly can.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it.
What's coming up next,
Ivy,
Michael?
can you help me here? Coming up next is
Although I want more of those biscuits.
excuse me.
Do you really want one?
No.
Okay.
I'll get some. I'll get some toward the end.
Here. No. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Potatoes and turnips.
Ivy's a pinch hitter here
He is
today.
doing
It
good.
was only like an hour ago. I said, "Hey, you want to be in the live stream and bring us food?" So
He loves turkey, and he loves.
we're talking about Brent Franklin here.
Yes,
right?
we are. And he loves potatoes. France is going through a famine, just as different famines have swept Germany and Ireland and everybody else. But they are resisting potatoes, just as England would make fun of our colonials when they would be captured and they'd dump out their haversacks and here's cornmeal, and they'd make fun of them. The English wouldn't even feed their hogs corn, and here we are eating corn to survive. The French felt similarly about potatoes, and Franklin holds a dinner with a very influential people, and every single dish contains potatoes.
But he doesn't tell them.
I think that's the case. I don't find that right out, but they talk gloriously of the meal and potatoes. You are not making the cider.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
That's what it needed.
That's not what it needed. In any event, we'll be having some smoked turkey, and we'll have some colcannon. Colcannon we think of as an Irish dish. It does come across from Ireland, but it shows up in English usage in 1735. We have a journal, William Bulkeley, who's writing that he tours Dublin twice in that year, and he has mashed potatoes and cabbages.
That way is no, forget it.
No, and then I found that it's included in an English classical dictionary of vulgar tongue in London, 1785, and it says colcannon, potatoes and cabbage pounded together in a mortar and then stewed with butter, an Irish dish. So that's what we're having. It's mashed potatoes, not whipped with a beater, with an electric mixer. Use a potato masher, and you're simmering a cabbage on the side with some onion and some salt and pepper. I used some. I simmered it in chicken broth. And then I make my mashed potatoes with a lot of cream and a lot of butter, and then I added the cabbage to it, and that's
Turns out pretty okay.
what we'll be having here. Yeah, it's
So all these French folks, what was their reaction to the potato?
Helps me keep looking like. Go ahead and bring it up. Thank you so much. There you go.
Brian doesn't have different plates.
Yeah,
That's okay. That's okay. So we have our mashed potatoes with cabbage, a lot of butter, a lot of cream. You can't go wrong. And some smoked turkey. There aren't any individual people being accredited with any specific words, but they shortly after that, since they were so influential, potatoes start showing up, and it's certainly part of their cuisine now. So
you're supposed to say they thought it was incredible and wonderful.
they thought it was incredible and wonderful.
And they were amazed when they found out they were potatoes.
Incredibly amazed.
He didn't know how to tell a story.
Oh. It's just a reference to these guys, but the fact that he would do it at all shows how he was pushing our cuisine whenever he had the opportunity. He was always talking up. And he writes a letter to his wife, kind of a condescending letter, to Deborah, his common-law wife, about not sending him apples, the Newtown pippins, and he was surprised that she would have forgotten. And here she is, thousands and thousands of miles away, trying to hold down the fort, as he's in Paris, flitting about Paris and London.
Yeah.
Well, not always, but saving our country too. It is. But they had a very interesting life, very interesting existence.
So he wanted her to send him apples from home.
Right. So that he could enjoy
Like they
them.
didn't have apples in France.
He preferred those Newtown pippins. So I think he was in London when he wrote that letter. It's I've got it here. But it's they have an interesting relationship. They have 3 children.
When you say interesting, is that like when I use interesting to describe foods?
It's not always. It's not just it seems to be a marriage of convenience. They have an attraction for each other when he first shows up in where is it, Boston or Philadelphia? And
Philadelphia.
yeah, and he wants to ask her hand in marriage, and her father says, "Well, you said you're going to go to London. Why don't you come back from London and get a job, and then we'll consider that." He goes to London. He pretty much forgets her. He has relationships
Hard to
abroad.
believe.
Yes, and then her father dies. He comes back. He tries to find a rich woman with a dowry, cannot, and then settles for Deborah. Deborah, while he has been in London, marries another man who has come across the seas from London, and there are suspicions that he left a wife behind, not divorcing her, and he runs up quite a debt. She has had enough of the marriage. She cannot get divorced. She comes back and lives with her mother, and he flits off to Jamaica. And there's word that he has died in Jamaica, but they can't prove that. To be married again while you're married to someone else can get you 39 lashes and lifetime imprisonment, male or female. So she doesn't want to do that, and Benjamin doesn't want to do that. So they just enter into an agreement that they will live together, and they live together the rest of their lives. Her life only lasted 45 or so years. As a matter of fact, William, his illegitimate son, whom they raised along with the 3 children they had, writes to him a couple of times while he's in London saying, "Mother is not well. She has a stroke, appears to have had a massive stroke, and then dies after that, and he never comes home, doesn't write her. He doesn't come home to her funeral."
But it wasn't actually an easy trip. It's
No,
not
but
like, hey, I'm going to
nobody is coming back and forth when he chooses to.
Yeah.
He chose to take a trip to visit Scotland. He chose
there you go.
to visit Germany with a friend and get all the accolades of him being an accomplished scientist, but he doesn't find time to come say goodbye to her. And that seems to be kind of how his life is. It's very interesting. He's so warm in some areas and so
Quite a
distant in
soap
others.
opera.
It
Quite
is.
a soap opera.
The more I read, sometimes you don't want to lift the curtain and see what's behind the curtain.
Yeah. How about a question or two? Kyle.
Sure. Do you know of any old period correct blacksmithing books?
It was supposed to be a longer question. The art of blacksmithing, I think that's early 19th century or early 20th century. I don't know of any pieces that are much older than that. I'm sure they're out there. There is a very interesting 18th century cutlery book. A cutler describes all the different kinds of items he makes. I don't know I think it's been translated, at least roughly, and the images are very, very interesting.
Hey, real quick, can we do kind of a refresher on kind of what we're doing today? There's some people who have jumped in since.
Yes. So if you've just popped in and you're saying, what is going on? This is a live stream and guys are eating food and they're dressed in funny clothes. I'm John Townsend. This is Michael Dragoo. And we are talking about foods that Benjamin Franklin talked about. And not only just talking about it, we're eating them. Because Michael brought them because he likes to eat food.
Yes.
And he thought I would like it too. So we've had biscuits.
Yep.
Made with corn because he was a big promoter of corn, thinking corn was a wonderful thing because we've got lots of corn here and other places they didn't think it was so wonderful. Right. Pickles, everybody's got to have a pickle to help their digestive juices.
Yep.
And we've got cold cannon, mashed potatoes with cabbage in it. This is super good. Of course, you totally cheated using chicken broth and who knows what other kind of addictive chemicals he put in that.
No.
Totally deadly. And wonderful smoked turkey. And we all know that Benjamin Franklin was a turkey nut. He thinking maybe it should have been the national bird instead of the eagle.
No, but it's
what?
No, that's not true.
I say it is.
Okay.
Hey, Ivy, is there any more of that turkey?
And speaking of his wife, I thought there was an interesting story.
Yeah.
He takes a trip. He was a Boston person. He's coming to Philadelphia. He shows up at the docks in Philadelphia. He's walking down the street. He's hungry. He hasn't eaten recently. There's a kid walking down the street eating bread. He says, "Boy, where can I get some bread?" And he gets directed to a baker. And so he goes to the baker and he says, "I would like," what does he say? He says, I want biscuits like they have in Boston." And of course, the person in Philadelphia says, "We don't have anything like that. I don't know what you're talking about." And then Benjamin Franklin says he wants a 3-penny loaf. And the baker doesn't have any 3-penny loaves. So he says, "Well, just give me 3 pennies worth of bread." And he gives him these big puffy, what does he call them? Puffy rolls. And of course, he's got 3 big puffy rolls and he doesn't know what to do with them. So he sticks one under one arm, one under the other arm. He's eating one of them. And then he walks by the Reed's house, which is the person we were just talking about, Deborah Reed's house. You know, she sees him walking down the street with bread under both arms, and he's munching on one. That was a wonderful first impression, I am sure.
He's wearing what he wore on the trip.
Yeah, he probably
to town.
looked like
He had no other clothes. So
quite a ragamuffin.
He was a ragamuffin. Yes.
He was quite a person who talked about. He was a very frugal. That's the word I'm looking for. Cheap was what came to mind, but he was a very frugal person, and he was certainly someone who was very disciplined in himself.
Yes.
And he talks about breakfast a lot of times when he's in his autobiography, and breakfasts being commonly just bread and cheese and beer. That's your breakfast in the 18th century quite often. And there were times when he worked in a printer shop, and many times in printer shops and apprentice situations, you would see a thing where beer was part of your pay. And you would get paid beer in the morning, and you'd have beer breaks throughout the day. Yeah, it's a good thing that work isn't like that anymore, where you guys just have these beer breaks throughout the day. But he was somebody who said, "Wait a minute, I would rather have the money, and I won't drink the beer," because he found that he worked better by not drinking the beer all throughout the day. Hard to believe, I know.
No.
Especially as somebody who's working in a printing shop, setting up the set, the typeset, and making things, look the way they should. He talks about, let me see if I can find his, they even made fun of him. They called him a water American because he was drinking water instead of beer. But he wondered, they were all trying to figure out why he was stronger and more diligent, because he was drinking this weak water instead of strong beer.
Right.
I don't know. I think we should, bring all that
Yes.
back today. Breakfasts. They're muddling breakfast of beer, bread, and cheese. And instead, he would have water gruel sprinkled with pepper, crumbled with bread, and a bit of butter, all for the price of just that pint of beer.
My goodness.
3 halfpence. So a penny and a half buys you a pint of beer or a nice frugal breakfast.
Well, he's raised in a 2-room home, a rented home, the lower level of a 2-room home, with 17 children. He's number 15 of 17 children. His father has 2 wives, and the first wife dies before Ben is born. There are 7
Not 2
children
at the same time.
No,
Then.
otherwise he'd be whipped. Or lashed. The first one has 7 children, and the second one has 10. So they had to be frugal. There just wasn't a lot of income, and they had to fend for themselves. So I found that he was a vegetarian for 3 years. He had read a book and decided that was a good life to lead, and off and on throughout his life he kind of kicks back to that. But he apparently on a trip from Philadelphia to New York, he's by boat. He's very hungry. He hasn't brought anything with him, and the crew is catching cod for the other passengers and for themselves, dispatching the cod and preparing it, boiling it. And he's very hungry, and he sees as the cod's open that there are little fish inside the cod, and he thinks, well, if those cod can eat those little fish, then I perhaps can eat the cod. After all, it's a good example of how you can rationalize anything if you're hungry enough. So, but he did eat frugally. He could entertain, and he could be entertained most lavishly. But he seems, when he's on his own, he seems to be a rather frugal person. Local raising, he doesn't like to import anything. He wants each community to kind of fend for itself with its produce, very much as today. And
There we go.
yep.
So give me a nice long question. Oh, wait, he's in the
Yeah,
middle.
sure, I'll give
He
one.
can't talk. Yeah. Michael brought too much
I did.
for us to eat.
Okay. Jumping off of the question that was asked earlier, are there any recommendations for historical books on woodworking?
Historical books on woodworking. Moxon, Moxon. There's a book, and it's all, I think it's mechanical arts in general. There's a lot of woodworking in there. If you're looking for something that's a period book, that's the only one that pops into my head. Again, Diderot's Encyclopedia, you can look at all sorts of wonderful images of what those workshops look like, what their tools look like. A great place to go just for a quick offhand look of, what's that workshop look like? What do their tools look like? Those images are sometimes, stereotyped. That isn't the word I exactly want, but they're probably a little cleaner or set up a little better than they were in real life, but at least it gives you a quick image of what those workshops were kind of like.
Yep.
Well, let me do some donations. I'm trying to eat this. It's really good. Okay. 2 donations from Kurt Sickler. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kurt.
Where did I don't even remember where I stopped. Oh, Max are cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Townsend's and Dragoo, the Nutmeg Tavern 2.
Whoa.
The legends.
Wow.
Hadosei019. Thank you. Hello, I love your videos and enjoy everything you do. Any good informative books or documentaries for a more general view of the colonial era?
It's hard to talk about generalities, because what would you even say about the generalities of America today? It's so different from one place to the other. So it can be difficult to get a grasp of generalities and actually have them mean anything, because once we generalize for that whole area, then it doesn't actually give you a good picture of any one specific place or any one specific person. So it can be hard, and so I do not have a recommendation for you on a general feel. Other than, I mean, a good general feel might be something like the autobiography of Ben Franklin. Just to get a taste. Here's this person who's writing about their life. They're not trying to describe it beyond, hey, what's my life? They're not trying to say, here's what everybody's life is like in America. But it gives you a quick glimpse about what this one sort of normal person, what it was like for them to walk around, the problems they had, what their life was like, their home life, where they grew up, what their, the idea of 17 children in the family, all those things kind of pop right out of an autobiography, or pick a journal.
The journals will give you, that's not necessarily colonial in nature.
Right.
If you're seeing someone going through Massachusetts and the hinterlands, out west near the Ohio River, they are not talking about Charlestown, but that's still their observations of that area.
Exactly.
You do that a couple different times, you can get a pretty good idea.
Right. Peter Kalm's journal, wonderful for that, because you get an outsider's view of what America's like in 1750. So Peter Kalm's journal, although he spends a lot of time talking about birds and, rocks on the ground, which aren't as quite as interesting to us in today's time. But he also talks about all the places he goes. A great book for that. Or Cresswell's journal, another just great story that gives you a glimpse, a picture into what life was like at one place.
Circuit riding, men of the cloth will sometimes describe their flock. In this particular place, they'll describe 70 or 80 souls. It's November, and 3 of them are wearing foot coverings. That kind of thing will tell you how to dress in November in that area.
Right.
If you're going to be I love that kind of thing, because those things that are that's not the real purpose of what he's about to say, but those observations are what are important to me. Really, you couldn't tell the men from women.
So
because they weren't dressed out, they were wearing what they had to wear to keep warm.
Yeah.
And
Charles Wood Mason's journal is one like that.
I had read that Franklin lost one of his children when the child was 4 to smallpox, and inoculation had been known since 1721, but he chose to not inoculate the child. And in his autobiography, here's 60 years later, he's 70 years later. I'm not sure when he entered this. He wrote it, and then he sat for 15 years. So, but he writes, in 1736, I lost one of my sons, a fine boy of 4 years old, by the smallpox taken in a common way. I have long regretted bitterly, and still regret, that I have not given it to him by inoculation. This I mention for the sake of the parents who omit that operation, on the supposition they should never forgive themselves were a child to die under it. My example showing that the regret may be the same either way, and that therefore the safer should be chosen. Right. That's not a political statement on today, but we still discuss that today.
Well,
and here he is regretting his entire life, the loss of a child to something he could have prevented. And here he is, not caring to see his wife into her death, but he's regretting. He doesn't mention he's regretting not seeing her. You know what I mean? But you read this over and over again, how he can be so passionate and so feeling about something, and seemingly so cold about something else. It's a hard character to figure out. He has one formal year of schooling at the Boston Latin School, and he has to be pulled out of that because his family of 17 children can't afford anymore. And he has done all of these things. It's just the wit, the brain is so. It's just one of those people. It's so interesting.
Yeah, quite a character.
And he made fun of people at Harvard and the like. Because of their limited knowledge, they would be taught a certain thing, and then they couldn't broaden their scope of vision, their thought. And here he was, unencumbered by that formality of education. So it's really fascinating.
Go
ahead, sorry.
I got one more donation real quick that I want to read, and then we'll move on. This is from Molly Dragoo.
Oh, boy.
Thanks for this awesome community and for keeping my dad out of trouble on the weekends.
You better believe it.
Oh, boy.
Do we want to talk about mugs
Thank you,
one more
Molly.
time real quick?
Yeah, let's do a real quick thing about mugs. Not this special mugs that I've got that Michael brought, but the even more special
Yes.
Nutmeg Tavern mugs. We got these wonderful Nutmeg Tavern mugs. Got the standard Nutmeg Tavern logo on here. It made in the United States, hand thrown. They do such an excellent job. Beautiful glazed job, black with the blue that runs over the top. Or we've got a few of these chestnut with the green. We only have a small quantity. We brought these out last on the live stream last week. The majority of these guys have already been sold. We still have a box or two left. So if you're interested in a Nutmeg Tavern mug, jump in, get them now before they all disappear, because they will be gone soon. And what else do I need to talk about?
Do we want to do some more questions? Do we want to move on to the next?
We only have one more little course, so let's go ahead with more questions.
Okay.
How widespread was pewter poisoning among the ordinary folk?
A lot of people used pewter.
A lot of people use pewter, and I collect old, cheap pewter, 250-year-old pewter, high in lead content. I don't use it. Anything acidic will release that lead.
There's a plate around here.
They are heavier than heck. But I, although you could live into your 70s very easily, the average age in this time period is around 24. And that is mainly from childbirth,
Childhood disease.
diseases, and women dying during childbirth, and hearth burnings. There are an incredible number of women die from infections from getting burnt or scalded in the fire. So I don't know that a lot of the things we're used to having to take drugs for and needing to get fixed for, they didn't live long enough to have that happen. So I don't know how long.
A little lead in your diet isn't going to hurt
Well,
you
that's
that
a little
much,
lead.
right?
I can't tell you how long it takes to have an issue with lead in your diet.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What were popular veggies during that time?
All the standard ones that we
Yep.
think of, you're going to see, carrots and potatoes and broccoli, cabbage and lettuce, all the standard greens that pop up and beets, all these veggies that we have today, greens, they're all pretty typical. They've got some ones that we don't have today.
I didn't come prepared for that, but I have a sheet of those.
Things like skirrets.
I don't know what that
And
is.
yeah, they're like a white carroty kind of a cross between a carrot and a parsnip, and so there's skirrets. Chardoons. Yeah, I think they're like a thistle blossom, I believe. Can you think of any other ones?
Things that, for example, the turnips, we're eating the red part, the rip part, but the leaf is also,
Right.
they're eating seasonally. Otherwise, they're having to preserve it in some manner. We ate a cucumber that was pickled
Right.
because we wanted to have that later than its season.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, those nettle, they're eating a lot of things from what's around them as a supplement to the things they've grown. They have to. That sometimes the crop fails. Sometimes rodents get into the crop.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, lots of most anything that you would see today, except for things that grow, in the east, on the other side of the Pacific. We wouldn't have those sorts of things, but most everything.
most everything. Yep.
Were people over 6 feet tall really uncommon during the 18th century?
There's documentation or research that's kind of back and forth on that. I've seen a lot of people that said, no, they weren't as naturally short as we think they might have been, and then other people, and then other things I've seen sort of contradicted that. So that's, I think, still unsettled as to just exactly how rare tall people were.
I don't know. They were burning. A working man was burning close to 6,000 calories a day. So they were not built like I would go out of my way to show my prominence here, to show that I could afford to be this way and be successful in my career or in my lot in life, in my position. But most people were slightly built and seemed to live longer than people who weren't. Once they got out of the town and got off and got their own land, they were living a lot longer. My family history is an example of that, but many people's are. Once they got away from the squalor and not that everybody was poor, but the sanitation, the opportunity to get diseases, just everything. Once you were away from that, you could live and just had the
City of life could be dangerous.
That could be dangerous, yeah. Don't drink the water.
What was one of your favorite historical dishes that you've made? We'll go John and Michael.
I answer this about every week, so I'm not going to just pass this one right on to you.
Mine are simple. I'm not that sharp to begin with, so mine aren't that complicated. But when I'm using my earthen oven, my portable earthen oven at events, I really enjoy some of the turnovers or pastries that come out of that, or just the small bowls, B-O-U-L-E, of bread. Just in a fired environment, just like people would enjoy an earth-fired pizza. It tastes different, and it's fun. You slow down. You have to get all the ingredients around. You put the thing in. You're turning it. You're cooking it. It's a labor of love to produce, and it's really enjoyable for me. I can't rattle off really complicated dishes. The cold cannon I really enjoy. It's tasty. It didn't take anything to do, but so.
Except a whole lot of butter and broth and everything else. Let's see. For me, I still go back to the white pot pudding as being one of the best.
It's good. That was good.
But it seems like every third one is just like, wow, that's incredible. I mean, even today we were out shooting a couple of episodes, and that one was really weird.
Yeah. I know exactly which one of the two you're
It's
talking
like,
about.
okay, you have to decide, is that really, really good, or is it just
It was
different?
really, really good.
It was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm surprised over and over again by the wonderful tastes and flavors that you get when you do them over the fire, when you use these ingredients that you don't normally do. They mix savory and sweet when they don't normally.
Right.
So
the
there's
pies.
a lot of interesting stuff.
And remember that they don't have baking soda or baking powder. The things we just take for granted when we're throwing together a batch of cookies, they didn't have. So even that simple little bread, it's different tasting. It's very dense.
Yeah.
It's just, you taste the things that are in it, and it's not just this.
That's why we
white
savor
stuff.
the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.
Damn it,
So
that's right.
we got about 10 minutes left. Do we want to move on to the...
Let me get one bite left here.
Okay.
Could you just bring the one chunk of that cheese, please? The Parmesan cheese.
Any plates?
You don't have to. Just bring a chunk out. You're good. Thank you very much.
And then one more time, just kind of a recap of kind of what we're doing today for those who have just...
So if you've just popped in, I've got Michael Dragoo here, special guest, and he is our faux Ben Franklin today.
I'm referred to that frequently, and someone wrote in the last time I was here, just a month ago. Thank you so much.
Maybe a bigger slice of that.
Here, why don't you dispatch that while I'm
Okay.
And they said, wouldn't it be interesting if he talked about what Ben Franklin's favorite foods were? So I thought, well, hell, I have no idea what those are. Let me do some research, and we came up with a good cross section. He was very, quite varied in his tastes. He loved Parmesan cheese. It's generally served at the end of a meal in this time period. Cheeses are. Thank you.
There you go.
And
Closes your stomach.
yes, closes your stomach.
And I love Parmesan
Yeah,
cheese.
it's
It's my
good.
favorite Parmesan cheese.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
He writes to a friend to get him a recipe, and a couple of years later, if someone does bring him a recipe, send him a recipe so he can make it himself. He just loved this cheese. I think it's imported, period. I don't think it's made in England. I think it's
Correct. It's
Yeah.
it's from
yeah. At this time,
Parmesan,
yeah.
from Italy.
Yeah.
It's my favorite cheese. It's a cheese that can last a long time. And so it's really good for transport. It's one of those hard cheeses, salty cheese.
Yep.
So it transports really well and ages well compared to most things. Makes a wonderful cheese soup, or what we might call Welsh rarebit. They called it Welsh rabbit. Great stuff.
Yep. I forgot about that. You did that too, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
We'll
But
get a couple donations, and then we can do some more questions.
I need more cheese now.
You got more cheese.
Kelly, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks for all you do. I so enjoy watching your videos and learning about 18th century history. And then hello, 1212. Thank you. That's all I got for now. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Got one more tidbit from Franklin, not Franklin the dark side, but just the other side. He holds out wanting to wanting us to stick with England. He would like.
What? Okay, hold on.
He wants to stay a part of England, just not have the
Ready?
misrepresented
Oh, yeah.
taxes. He wants to have local representation of the taxes, but he finally has enough. He is embarrassed publicly in England and has enough, and he switches over. And but his son William, whom he's helped, and with the help of other influential people in England, William is made the governor of New Jersey. He's a loyalist and stays a loyalist. And we eventually imprison William. Benjamin had an opportunity to have William not be imprisoned, just shipped back to England. He chose not to. He did not come
Teach
to
that boy a lesson.
He did not, well, he stayed in prison a good while and was then ferried back to England. But he never helped William's wife, who was left with the home and trying to raise a family. He never offered, with repeated letters from William and from William's wife, never responded. William's wife dies, and William never sees her. Once he's in prison, he never sees his wife again. And so we got this dark side, this other side of Franklin, who has an opportunity to not be looked upon in a negative manner, to be helping his son get away from here and get back to England where he belongs. He's just it's just interesting. It's sad and interesting. And he keeps William's son and doesn't let his son see William while he's in prison. He allows William to see William's son, Franklin's grandson, in England once, and that's in a meeting when he's telling William that he's going to sell the farm to the grandson. He's going to do this for his son and that for his, and he's telling William how to divvy up the property that Franklin helped him attain. And that's the last they chat.
This reminds me of something.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before, and I think it's something that we have difficulty with at times. That these people in the 18th century were real people, just like you, me, your neighbor at home, and we can, from 200 years or 250 years later, kind of judge them. We can kind of judge them back in history.
I found myself doing that. Yeah.
But we can't necessarily do that because we don't know the whole story, right? And so it's like there's a dark side to Benjamin Franklin. Well, there's a dark side to everyone.
Right.
And we don't know the whole story, but it's very illuminating, and it does show us the real humanity in these people in history.
Right.
We can't forget that they're just regular people, just like
Right.
you and I. We change them into some sort of, special demigods. They can be.
Well, that's how we're taught. And
Right,
it's
but they aren't. They're
important to
just,
remember, yes.
they're just regular people.
Yeah. He has slaves his whole life.
Yeah.
He and his wife, his Commonwealth law wife, Deborah, have slaves before. They have children together. At the time of his death, he releases them, but they've died before him. They weren't ever free.
How do you release somebody?
And he buys and sells slaves too. One of his slaves escapes. He has two slaves. One is called King, and one is called Charles, after the King of England.
Okay.
And King escapes, and he finds him, and this woman has taught him, I believe, to play the violin, some musical instrument. I apologize if it's not right, and something else. And so he has her buy the slave from him. Then he doesn't try to get him back, And Washington, till the end of his days, is trying to find his escaped, the woman that escapes him. The week of his death, he is still sending people out looking for her. So,
how about how many more questions should we get? Can
I
we
have
cover?
a lot of donations.
Okay.
That I should probably
Let's
do.
cover those real quick.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I'm not going to blitz through them.
Yes.
We appreciate everyone. Okay. Last one I did. Okay, here we go. Keltoid 5. Thank you.
thank you.
Made it in time. Are you going to do any more comedy type videos? Love the green sail video. Probably not.
Yeah, that was an age of the channel, and funny videos don't quite, other than possibly what you might see in a few minutes, is a very rare kind of
We'll
thing
see.
here on the channel. So generally we try to. The Nutmeg Tavern is where you're going to get as much of that as you're going to get.
yeah.
Okay, and then Phantom Creamer.
This channel's all grown up.
Do nutmeg on my nutmeg shirts come with nutmeg?
We might do a special load like that. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
That's a good one.
And then Teddy the Fourth. What is one ingredient readily available today that was not easy to come by in the 18th century that would have improved a lot of their dishes? That's a good question.
It's not available today.
Well, at least when it comes into baking, obviously.
No, that is available.
That exactly. When it comes to baking, we use baking powder and baking soda constantly. They didn't have those, so those quick breads that we think of all the time. That's one of those things. Another one that we use for flavoring all the time. I don't know if it'd make it better or not, but we use vanilla. They did not use vanilla. So those are a couple quick examples of items.
That's all I got now. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks
How
so
about
much to
one
everyone.
last question? How about that, Kyle?
Okay. Sure. Well, what kind of
Yeah, caught him off guard.
what kind of desserts did Franklin enjoy?
What do you think?
He mentions puddings frequently, and I considered bringing a pudding. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't bring any documentation because I didn't bring it, but I just kept, and he didn't elaborate to say exactly what it was, and that was, I was either going to just come up with one and
It was a
be
yummy
represented.
boiled pudding. I am sure that was his favorite.
It was a yummy boiled pudding. They were, well, he doesn't say boiled necessarily, but there are references to him enjoying puddings, and puddings could be savory or sweet or anything in between. Take it, John.
No,
I'm
think-
stumbling. Why did you find a reference
I
that
don't
you
know. I
brought?
don't think so. No, that was a hasty pudding. No, that's all I had. I would
Awkward
say it
space
was
here.
a boiled pudding with a wonderful pudding sauce made with sack, sugar, and butter.
There you are.
I'm pretty sure that
Well-
that would have been my favorite if I were Ben Franklin,
And he preferred simple to extravagant.
or possibly with honey.
It's possible.
Because honey, well, actually, the biscuit we had here was about as much of a as a dessert as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
so we've had a wonderful time. Thank you, Michael, for bringing
sure,
all
thank you.
this way too much food.
Yes.
And the stories that go along with it. It's always fascinating to dip into history and look at the food for different sorts of people. So, it'd be an interesting study to look at George Washington's food,
Yep.
or what Jefferson was doing for food, and then what regular people do for food. We do a lot of that here on the channel, as well as what regular life was like, or the skills or whatever. So, you guys out there are what kind of spurs our interest in particular things, just like the episode today was, hey, what was Ben Franklin's food like?
Right.
Well, we brought it to you. We had a lot of fun doing that research.
And the illustration.
Yeah, and that was fun. I want to thank Ivy behind the bar. Thank you, Aaron and Kyle. I want to thank everyone out there for your amazing support for what we do, whether it's helping us with Super Chat, supporting us on Patreon, buying mugs, whatever you do, even if you just comment on our videos, you help us. Thank you so much.
Take them to heart.
And we will see you later. Thank you so much.
Bye.